second episode, which I watched straight after, so this is why it's blurry.
Yeah. Second episode I preferred.
So this was a big thing, and I think it's the reason they released two together. And it's a problem I feel all fantasy shows have, is episode 1 is always very slow paced. Because in fantasy there is a lot of main characters and there's a lot of kind of backstory they have to kind of quickly get you up to speed on.
I think that's why I felt so lost during episode 1, because I'm like, have you ever rocked up to lessons like day 4 of school because like you were away on holiday and you got back late and you've come back in and you're like, why are there letters in my math class all of a sudden? Did I miss something?
No,
that's kind of how I felt for the first episode.
Like, even I know bits of stuff, like I've said a few times, like, and I know there's probably going to be people in the comments going, "Oh, you've got this law wrong," or "You covered." It's like I'm going off what I know. I don't really know fuck all about the First Age. So it's like when I saw those opening shots and there was like a war going on, I'm like, are we reliving the Sauron fight? Like it's elves and shit again? And then realizing that, so it's like episode 1 was very much we've got to kind of touch on the First Age because it plays an important part into what the fuck's going to be going on, like the lead up. But it's like there's so much to cover to get people up to speed. First episode was kind of slow paced. I think that's why they then hit you. They got 2 episodes off the rip, and the second episode, in my opinion, was much better paced, and was a much better episode and flowed a lot better because they were able to do the setup, and it needed the 2 episodes releasing together, in my opinion. Otherwise, if everyone just watched episode 1, they'd be like, not so sure. But because they gave us episode 2, I think everyone feels a lot better about the show. But we got obviously some more shots of like we'll call him the Stranger just because we don't 100% know who he is. The Stranger doing like carving weird runes in the ground. Obviously they like him snapping the stick. They happened to, I don't think this was tied, but they tied it on purpose with this. He snaps the stick as Nori's dad breaks his ankle. And I don't know if they're purposefully, because they talked about bad luck, didn't they? She was like, oh, this is going to, if people find out you've helped this guy and anything bad goes wrong, they're going to blame you and say it's bad luck that you brought on. And because they're very superstitious people, the hobbits. I think they purposely timed those shots up, but I don't actually think, to make you kind of think, did the wizard break his ankle? Or was it just pure by chance? But he's obviously
sorry, that just made me think something.
Go on.
What if every time they get ready to leave, something goes wrong, so they think it's the universe telling them they have to stay there and they settle there, and that becomes the Shire?
It possibly could be. Because the migration, they're meant to be migrating, and there's something obviously is going to happen with the migration that causes them to stay where they are. Obviously he's carving runes and things. We don't really know anything about him. It basically, all it shows more of the Stranger guy is like he's magical in some sense and he's tied to the stars because he has the fireflies. But then they play it back into he could be evil because all the fireflies die after he's done with them, which I thought was a interesting touch because everyone, that scene when he's like he's whispering to the fireflies, similar to how Gandalf whispered to the butterfly to get aid, which is one reason why people are like, oh, is this Gandalf talking to animals the same way? But he gets all the fireflies to place themselves out. Looks beautiful, great shot, appreciate it. Finishes and then they all just drop to the ground dead. And you're like, ooh, something evil is going on here.
Yeah, it's almost like he himself hasn't decided if he's evil or not.
I think they're obviously trying to keep us guessing.
As all good shows try to do.
We also don't know a lot about how magic works in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that one of them things that was kept very kind of... It's magic, don't question it.
Well, at least, I don't know about lore side, but from Lord of the Rings perspective, we've only know of Gandalf and Saruman, but mainly we just see Gandalf and how he uses magic. And he didn't do anything super crazy. But we don't know if that's because he's now conservative, because he knows if magic can be an evil thing if overused, maybe. I don't know. So they're keeping us guessing with that. And then we got to see Khazad-dûm, which, do you know that Khazad-dûm is the Mines of Moria?
No.
Okay, I wondered if this was going to be a question. In Lord of the Rings, it's referred to as the Mines of Moria, also known as Durin's Halls, or Khazad-dûm is the dwarven name for it.
But that's the city that Elrond went to visit.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And he is friends with Durin the Fourth, which is the son of, I think it's Durin the Third, but is known as Durin the Undying. So I don't know if you remember me a couple of weeks back mentioning the thing about Durin.
Durin was known as Durin the Undying, but actually it was just he always named his son Durin.
Yeah, and they look the same.
And they all look the same, so it kind of became a thing.
And people were early before the show released. People were like, "Oh, Durin shouldn't have a son at the same time." Blah blah blah. I think it's fine. Like, I don't think it breaks. And there is a Durin the Fourth, and it's just like they're just squishing the timeline
Durin
down.
the Undying would come off the reign of Durin had ended anyway.
Because people would
look back on history. I'm talking more realistically here.
Oh yeah.
People would look back at history and go, "Wow, there was a Durin king for like 800 years, and they all looked identical." Like how everyone looks at old paintings of people who look like Keanu Reeves and go, "Keanu Reeves has existed forever." It's like a retroactive kind of thing.
Yeah, I think in the books there's more a sense of like the older dwarves are like, "Oh yeah, this Durin's been telling the younger ones like, yeah, this is the same Durin that's been on the throne for as long as I've been alive," probably knowing full well that he was younger at one point and he grew. Yeah. But I think what people need to realize is Amazon's having to squash a lot of the timeline. So bringing Durin the Fourth and his son forward into this earlier of the second age makes sense for the show. So Elrond's friends with him. Obviously,
I did really enjoy how angry he was, because like dwarves live for like 250 years in the Tolkien universe.
Is something I will touch on. One thing first, you talked about the weird elven blacksmith guy that you thought was creepy.
Yeah.
Do you realize what project he's planning on doing?
Is it the rings he's getting ready to work on?
Yes.
And obviously we know the rings corrupt people, so I assume he's becoming partially corrupted just in the process of making them.
So there's 19 rings made. Sauron.
That many? Jesus Christ.
So there was 9 for the elves, 7 for the dwarves, 3 for the men, or 6 for the dwarves, 4 for the men, something like that. And then there's the 20th one is the one ring to rule them all, which Sauron had. So the theory is Sauron is already somehow, whether it's like only slightly, has influenced the elven blacksmith guy to start this project, knowing full well that a one ring to rule them all will be made.
Well, yeah, because why would anyone agree to a project where, we all get given this ring, but if someone has this one ring, they have control over us?
Well, they don't mention that there's one ring to rule them all. That's done in secrecy. It's obviously probably come to him in a dream or something as a way to unite all the races and give all the races equal powers. They all have these powerful elven rings, elven crafted rings. So yeah, he was wanting to make a forge and to make the rings.
So one sec, was Elrond going there to get them to agree to accept the rings once they were made, or to get their help in getting the material to make the rings?
He was going there to try and get their help to build the forge, because he says the blacksmith guy is like, "Oh yeah, we need this by like the summer or something. Like basically we need this built within a few months," sort of feel like rush, which is like a huge construction job that like, yeah, there's only the 2 of them. They're going to need help from like the best builders in the whole of Middle Earth, dwarves.
Which is dwarves, yeah. Okay, cool, that makes sense.
Which is also why people are like, why is he in such a rush to have this built and made? Kind of feels like someone's influencing him to want to do this.
Which is where the creepy vibes come in, because he thinks it's his own thought, but it's not.
Yeah, it could very well be the start of Saruman pushing his influence into the world. So yeah, that's why they go to Khazad-dûm. Obviously, they don't go to the entrance we all know, where speak friend and you may enter. There's, as we know from The Hobbit, dwarven cities and the mountains had many entrances, many hidden entrances. This is obviously the entrance that Elrond knows of. And he goes and he asks to enter, and it's showing his face, and he doesn't know why. And unsure as why, he then evokes, I forget the title of it. It has a name, and essentially it's that challenge of endurance. It translates to Longbeard, which is then a challenge of endurance. So he obviously is friendly enough from Durin and knew about this challenge, and knew that if he called on this challenge, they have no choice but to bring him in.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like the way elves are portrayed is like they're supposed to be like these higher beings that are very like intelligent, and they yearn for knowledge. So the idea that he's had a dwarven friend, you would expect Elrond to fully understand the dwarven culture and therefore know about stuff like this.
Oh yeah, and like if your dwarven friend is heir to the throne, like he's probably witnessed this challenge happen from dwarves rocking up and being like, "Yo, I challenged Durin to the Battle of Endurance or whatever," and he's probably watched it from the sidelines, like all the dwarves were watching. So that's like, he knows, well, they're not letting me in. How can I get in here to talk to my friend? Oh, I'll risk it and I'll just call on this challenge, which is why he gets fucking escorted like a prisoner, sort of. But this is the first time we've ever got to see Khazad-dûm in like prime glory. And when I tell you, when that scene came on of him, they're walking through the
panning shot.
They walk out the hallway and there's just like a waterfall, like this huge open shot of in like all its glory. I was like, oh my god, this is like heaven for me. I fucking loved it. It looked stunning, and
it really, really did.
It showed like how they used the like sunlight on mirrors to bring light into the inside of the mountain, and you could see the just like pure like in all its glory. And then they go into like the challenge room, and Durin arrives doing a little Khazad-dûm.
Is it just me, or did Elrond like give up? He definitely had more left in the tank, but decided not to.
I get the sense it was like he definitely gave up a little bit early, which I think is a bit of he was never invoking this challenge to win. This was just so he could talk to his friend. And he obviously doesn't want to beat Durin and show up his friend, because it's not the polite thing to do, let's be honest. You're not going to come into your friend's home and then beat him at a challenge just for the sake of beating him.
I don't know. I rocked up at many friends' houses and whooped their ass at FIFA.
It's a little bit different. you're not next in line for the throne and about to rule a whole kingdom.
True. Valid.
But yeah, I do think he was breaking the hammer, and they gave him a new one. He could have probably carried on, but he yielded. And then this is when like what you were going to bring up just before, which is the whole, we got what I thought was a beautiful scene that really showcased kind of the relationship people have with elves, not from the elven side. Because yes, we're told like many a time through Lord of the Rings that elves live for thousands of years. They're basically immortal. Like, oh, how brilliant it is to live forever, and you get to see all this time and whatnot. We rarely get shown it from like a real relationship side of things, from the other side of the people that aren't immortal.
Yeah.
And the fact that yes, to elves 20 years is like nothing. It like goes back, like they're numb to it. Like 20 years feels like a year.
Well, it's like that was said in the monologue at the beginning. Until that war started, elves didn't even know they could die.
Yeah.
Because they didn't. Because unless killed, they lived forever. So they didn't even realise they could die until this war started. So 20 years is literally piss all.
Yeah, and it's like they're just numb to it. They don't even think about the fact that like 20 years to other people is a long time. Like it's just
which is really funny, because they're very emotionally intelligent race. Like they do care about other people's feelings, but when you perceive time so differently,
Yeah, but they do
it's really tricky.
feel they are like they know they're from a higher power place, so they
Yeah, they're a little bit elitist.
yeah. So I really did love the whole thing of like how Durin was that whole monologue between the two of them and how emotional it was with him being like, I've lived a whole life in 20 years. Of course he'd be pissed off. If like your one of your close mates just dipped for 20 years and never contacted you, you'd be like, the fuck? What have I done?
And and you know what? It wouldn't actually even be as bad in that situation because 20 years has passed for them as well. But
Yeah.
when you know they're gonna live forever, and it's like
20 years to them
they've
is
forgotten you
nothing.
after 20 years. Yeah, it's a long old time for you.
So I thought that was a really beautiful thing that they did and got like showcased it from that side of things. And I loved how he slowly got worn away too, because you could tell that like where he was coming from when he was saying all that, like he was more hurt that his friend had done this, and he still saw him as a friend. And then he's slowly like, well, fine, you can meet my wife, but you're not staying for dinner. I'm still pissed at you.
I loved his wife so much.
She was great. And to the people that were like, dwarves don't have beards, I don't know if, yes, the female dwarves that we saw didn't, like, I wasn't sure if it was going to be just her, but yes, a few of them that we saw didn't have beards. So maybe in this world, and it's perfectly fine for Amazon to do, they might have decided that the people of Khazad-dûm and the Mines of Moria, that race of people, or that city, the women shave their beards. Maybe in another dwarven mountain they don't.
Let's be realistic. The reason they've done it is so at a glance you can tell who's a male dwarf versus a female dwarf. That's why they've done it. Rightly or wrongly, whether you like it or
Yeah.
not, that is why they've done it.
One thing they did do though, although they don't have a full-on beard, she did have a little bit of like almost sideburn, wispy bits
Yeah.
that you could tell that she's still growing like facial hair. So it's like, I think people have probably moved past that now and have got over it because it was released so long ago. But I thought she played her role
They've
great.
gone back. They've gone back to just being angry about the fact
Yeah.
that's a black dwarf.
Yeah. But I loved the whole like, you can meet my wife, but you're not staying for dinner. And then she's like, oh, stay for dinner. It's like, no, he's not staying. And yes, he is. And then the kids run in with these giant, like, dwarven carved helm
Yeah.
things on. And
how many times do I have to tell you not to put my heads on?
yeah, just like a funny, like, you can imagine, like, this is showing Elrond what he's missed, and this whole like kind of bridging that you're annoyed, like Durin's pissed with him, but he's still his close friend and he wants him to see his family and everything. It's like that struggle of wanting to stay annoyed at someone, but you can't.
He can outweigh my annoyedness because I will die before he realizes why I'm annoyed.
And then they're obviously having their meal and they talk about the tree that he had planted, which was
really cool.
So that's a seed from the trees of light, which is from the elven home world.
Yeah. The sapling from that tree, he said, didn't he?
And then there was a scene that everyone picked up on Twitter, I saw, which is when she, like, so I think the subtitle was like a growl, but she like gives him like that typical wife to her husband stare of like, you've done something wrong. And all of Twitter's like, oh, I think every man's seen that look from their other half before.
Yeah.
But I thought that was the way that they like did all of that relationship between the elf and the dwarf, like, was really well done.
I mean, that's the thing with all forms of media, book, TV, film, whatever. The actual thing that allows you to connect with characters is their relationships. Because these stories are not stories you can relate with. We can't relate with dealing with a war going on across hundreds of years and beings that live for thousands of years. What we can relate to is a friend hurting you and you want to forgive them because you still care about them, but you do want to be angry at them.
Yeah.
That we can all relate to very easily.
Which I think is why.
And I think that's where they've really nailed it.
Yeah, they've really nailed like the relationship side of things. That is what is relatable from the Tolkien stuff. Obviously he's there to talk to them about this opportunity. To which they don't really show them talking exactly about it, because obviously wanted to try and like lead up to what it is. And then we saw the shot of Durin and his dad during the Undying, deep underground somewhere, clearly thinking that he was actually he was, because Durin says you're here because you want something. I don't think he knew that it was they wanted their help building something. I think when they open that little chest and it glows, they obviously thought they wanted what was in there. Now, there's a couple of theories to what that might be, because we didn't see what was in the box. One is it's mithril, which is what we saw Frodo get a chain vest out of from the elves. Very expensive, rare metal, because it's lightweight and very strong. So obviously a very prized resource to have some.
But the elves will definitely rock up and think they're entitled to.
Some of it, yeah. My thought, all we have to think about is we know what happens to the minds of Moria and Khazad-dûm. We know what they uncover because we see it in Lord of the Rings. The Balrog. And there's a point when Durin's wife's talking about how they resonate and they sing, and the mountain reflects them and tells them where to dig tunnels, where to mine ores, and where not to dig. Where not to dig, because they know things hide in the mountains. We also know from The Hobbit, because Thorin Oakenshield and his family, they found what's known as the Heartstone of the mountain, which is like a huge fucking gem. And we're told every mountain has a Heartstone. I think that's this mountain's Heartstone. And I think they found it. And I think, obviously, it's an incredibly amazing gem. And obviously, everyone's going to fucking want it. Any elves would probably want it. And they want to keep it secret. I think the Heartstone is what then leads them to go, maybe there's more of this deeper, so they keep digging and then they go too far. Khazad-dûm becomes the fate of what we know happens to Khazad-dûm, and they unearth a Balrog.
So, another thing that I was slightly confused about, so we've obviously got this other thing, which is what they thought the elves were after. Are they also considering like double crossing them with whatever they've been asked to do as well? It doesn't seem like they're that keen on helping the elves.
I think it's more they thought the dwarves like to keep to themselves. That's why they live in mountains. And I think when it comes to sharing their gold or resources, the dwarves are very like, they're rich off that stuff. So they keep a lot of like their precious gems. Like what they get from the mountain is theirs, and they choose how it. So if someone comes along saying, "Oh, we want some of your mithril," they're not going to be happy. I think the dwarves must be happy to, because we know the 19 rings get made. So it's like they must be happy enough to help build a forge. And I think it's that like, you've been gone for 20 years, you're rocking up after we've recently found this stuff. Now you want something. This is weird timing. We'll probably find out more about if they do help or not in the next few episodes. But I think some people are thinking it's like mithril. I think it's the Heartstone. And I think because we know that they dig too far and they unearth the Balrog. So it's like, obviously Khazad-dûm leads to that during the Second Age and into the Third Age. Because Gandalf doesn't know. And because when they get there, it's fucking dead to the world. And then what else happened in... we saw some of our early orcs in the human village.
Now this is potentially just because I've like not watched Lord of the Rings in so long.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I knew the orcs were the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Were the orcs like created by Sauron as like a genetic mutation or something? Or do they just strive for evil, and because he was the most evil, they wanted to work for him?
They're always evil creatures. So the theory of why these orcs look different to like the ones we saw in Lord of the Rings is orcs, I think, are formed in the same way as they are in Lord of the Rings. It's just it was done en masse in Lord of the Rings, and they were like bred. Um, the one of the like theories people are just putting it down to is the orcs in Lord of the Rings were during a time of war and preparation for war, so they were being bred off of fucking ripped orcs and like ones ready for fighting and battle. The ones we're seeing are more like wild orcs that are breeding amongst themselves or whatever from just general like evil in the world is causing them to be a thing, but they're more like rough and wild and a bit scragglier and clearly just live off the land or whatever they can capture. And I think the reason they're like tunneling over under town and stuff and seem to be headed like they're obviously being drawn to this evil that's in the east or whatever they were saying. So they're obviously drawn to evil and come obviously gain from it because they get like beefed up. But I thought the fight that the mum and the kid had was fucking wild, and the way she chops the head off and then it just cuts to slamming it on the guy's counter in the bar and being like, "Oh, is this not a problem?"
This brings me up to my next couple of questions.
Okay.
The evil coming from over there that's like poisoned the cow and that.
Yes.
Is that just like the essence of evil is getting so much stronger because shit's starting to go wrong that it's causing that? Or is that someone actively doing that? Do we know or have any idea?
I don't think we know exactly. I think the theory is Galadriel kept talking about we need to go more north, the evil's in the north, because they found that fucking fortress place up in the North Ice, and it's got to be further north then, into the like uninhabitable area. When in fact, when you look on the map of Middle Earth, Mordor's like bottom right, which is like east, southeast. So one theory is this is actually Sauron's over there hiding, and obviously gaining strength, and that's why the land's getting more evil and things are being drawn to it and it's tainting things. And this could be the area that becomes what we know as Mordor.
Yeah.
But we don't know 100%. It's
and my
obviously
next question,
all linked.
Oh, I forgot what my next question was. Oh no, my next question. The fucking sword. Yes. I vaguely recognize it, but I'm confused.
So I don't think it's it could be. I don't think it's the same sword, like evil sword that was in Lord of the Rings. But from that age of Morgoth and that battle is when it's from, and it's like their evil, like it's their swords they forged, and it's been marked with Sauron's eye, and it clearly holds some certain evil power within it or connection. Same way as like when Frodo put the ring on the first time, he saw the eye, and it drew the kid's blood and started rebuilding itself. So it's obviously.
So is that sword going to like corrupt the kid?
Potentially. So this is the thing, like there's a few theories of who Sauron might be. It's either the giant or that kid's gonna get corrupted, or the elf blacksmith guy gets corrupted and becomes Sauron.
But I thought Sauron already existed and he was the general for the guy before.
In the books. Whether Amazon does it differently, I don't know. But people are trying.
I thought we'd already seen him though, because she spoke about one of his greatest heretics led an army, but he's gone now and we don't know where he is.
Who fucking knows what's going on? Like a lot of people seem to be theorizing who Sauron's going to be.
Is it possible that Sauron's like just it sounds like a title?
I think it's this might be where I'm getting confused about the books and what I know. It might be that Sauron is what a person ends up being called when they've absorbed this evil power. Sauron could be the evil power, and it corrupts people as a host, sort of thing.
Okay.
Potentially.
Got ya.
That could be where I'm getting confused.
So right now we might not necessarily have a Sauron, and we've got options for who's going to get corrupted and become the Sauron.
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
But yeah, that sword's definitely not a good thing. That kid having that sword secretly is definitely not a good thing. I think it's going to draw the orcs to them.
But he also seems like a really angry kid as well. And I'm not sure a really angry, angsty kid with a sword that's going to feed on them energies is really
it's never a good
the best
combo.
idea.
No. But they're obviously leaving town. Where they're going, I don't know. You've got the hobbits know something's up because the typical yearly migration things are not aligning at the right times. So they're aware something's going on.
Well, yeah, Lenny Henry was reading his book going,
this is too early, or this is...
shit's not adding.
Yeah.
Maths ain't maths in, ladies and gentlemen.
So they're slowly teasing this growth of evil amongst everyone's noses. Obviously the elves got discharged because there's no more war and there's no evil, and then he realized he went to see his lovely human wife. Well, it's not his human wife, but his human crush, and then found a cow that was squirting out black goo. But overall, because I think that's everything that happened in the second.
Yeah, I think we've covered basically everything.
I don't know if you've got any more questions of stuff that I haven't answered.
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of it.
But overall, I loved it. I
really, really enjoyed it.
I get the people that are pure Tolkien, have read all the books or something, are really deep in the lore, went into this hoping that was going to be the case. Kind of went in a bit naively, in my opinion. If you just looked up about it and what the show was going to be, you would have realized they didn't have the rights. And I think if you can look past that, and like we said, it's an alternate telling of history or an alternate timeline or fan fiction version, however you want to look at it. If you can look at it that way and just appreciate it for Middle-earth and a fantasy TV show, I think it's really great.
What I will say is I'm not the biggest fan of the fantasy genre. As I said before, a lot of the stuff gets overcomplicated, I think, to make it seem more fantastical. In 2 episodes, this show has managed to get me hooked, which I think for a fantasy show can be very challenging. So I will commend them there. It looks really good. I really want to see where it goes, but I'm probably going to have 3 questions every single week for you. So,
and I will do my best to keep up on everything that gets revealed.
I mean, just Lord of the Rings should have hit that MCU stride younger, and I'd have been a huge Lord of the Rings nerd instead. But they missed out on me.
I've always... I don't know what it is with fantasy. I always love dwarves in fantasy. So it's Lord of the Rings always got me hooked. Hobbit especially got me hooked.
Dwarves are really cool.
And it's getting to see Khazad-dûm and all that in this one. It's
it
sold me
so
100%
good
on the show.
But anyway, this episode is getting disgustingly long.